What's up? This is all right, let's do that. It's been a hot minute. I think it's like back in July. I'll be honest with you, man. I've been on this rebound, right? Just defining myself by my limits over the last little bit. And so I feel like I'm finally getting into a good groove again. So feels kind of weird. But um hello, welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Candland. I'm here with Michael Dirr. He is the owner of the Keys of the Jungle Instagram page of over 300,000 followers. And not only that, he's built a business out of it and just excited to talk with him. So thank you, Michael, for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So what were some experiences from like growing up childhood that you feel like maybe gave you a glimpse of what you're doing now?
That's interesting because I guess a lot of it, I don't know how much of it really tied in that much, but I guess growing up, um, I don't know, I was always the small kid in school, right? So I was always overlooked. So I always had to be a little bit creative about how to get attention, and I loved attention. So I guess kind of parlaying that into like social media and everything, it just kind of was natural of like, oh, well, I need to be creative in how I market myself and how to put myself out there so that, you know, I can get that attention. Which is funny because once I got that attention, I no longer crave that attention. So it kind of, went like this, which is like, I really want attention. And now I really don't want attention. So, but now I want my business to have attention. So it kind of flows like that.
Interesting. Yeah. I think our perception of people sometimes is way different than how they actually are. And so it really helps to, talk with them, like get to know them on a deeper level. I feel like in social media, we get this so one dimensional conversation and we build up this profile of them in our mind, like, oh, they're this super unreachable, whatever. Like the Greek gods, for example, is something I'm thinking of. They're like basically unreachable, control the universe or whatever. It's like, no, we're all just people.
Yeah. So yeah, I've definitely found that the more you get to know a lot of these socialites, I guess, on social media, a lot of them are very down to earth people. So spot on.
Well, it makes sense because we all want connection, right?
Mhm.
Cool. So let's talk about your first car. Where did that come from? Was there like a big, because cars is like that's the whole point of your page. If you go on your page, there's a lot of just these super, super nice cars that kind of blows my mind, dude. I drive like a 2003 Nissan Altima right now. It's not the nicest thing on the lot, but
But Nissan Altimas are the fastest rental cars. So that's got to count for something. Let's see. My first car was a BMW 3 Series, the E46 model. Which was funny because I really, really did not like BMWs at the time. I was all into like muscle cars. I was like, oh, I want a Camaro, I want a Mustang. Then I hopped in one and I was like, ew, this is kind of gross. So I guess it kind of made sense to just hop into, I guess more of a German car. Um, and so an older one is cheaper. So, um, got to start somewhere. And I learned to love that car. And it had like a semi like sequential gearbox. So it was like kind of in between automatic and manual. Um, so manual with two pedals, but and I love that car. Grew into the BMW community and kind of went from there. So
what was the age that you were able to secure that? And did you pay for it with your own money or what was the story there?
let's see. I was just about 17. Um, and I will say my parents did help with that one. Um, but I was doing all sorts of like I was doing all sorts of stupid entrepreneurial stuff in high school. I mean, I was selling study guides, I was doing whatever to like market myself. So I was kind of naturally just on that kind of trend anyways. But yeah, I mean the car is not super cheap. So they've gone up in value since then, which I'm like, why did I sell it? But um yeah, so kind of there, and then that use that money to roll into the next car, and then that money to roll into the next car, and so forth. And now I have a Tesla, so maybe I went downhill. I don't know.
Teslas are super cool. And I think this kind of goes back to something we kind of talked about earlier, where it's like things weren't really all set up. It's not like you grew up with social media. It's like, oh, I want to do that. It sort of was just something you just sort of fell into. Same thing with like Tesla. I don't know much about it, but it's like this wasn't around or even really talked about, like 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually initially hated social media, like hated it. I was like, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to do that. And then I had one friend growing up. He's like, well, we got to play games together on Facebook. It's more fun than video games. And I was like, okay, I'll make a Facebook. And then I was like, no way I'm making an Instagram. I actually had another friend sit there in that BMW and make my Instagram, like my personal Instagram first. Like, I don't want to be part of this. Why would I want to share anything in my life? It's stupid. And then like a year later, I started following these different people that had like all these different accounts that posted all these cool cars. I'm like, I love cars too. Like I could post pictures of fun stuff. So then I started posting like these terrible photos. And then it kind of just went from there. So it's not like social media is like an industry that's like, oh, I want to be a social media person. It just like happens.
Yeah, I think that is something that I've learned as I've kind of like had my bumps in the road and I'm sometimes really frustrated like where I'm at right now, but it's like life is always continuously changing and evolving with us. People are making decisions that are blessing us way down the road that we don't really know about. There's people that stick to their dreams for a while or they get in touch with the right person and then now we're using Discord or we're using one of these other platforms that is able to change our lives. So we never really know like what's coming up next.
Yeah, it's the amount of platforms that are out there now is just like mind-boggling. I mean, I'm on what? I have Keys to the Jungle's name on like 16 different platforms. Obviously, I don't use 16 different forms of media. I'd kill myself with the amount of work that would take. But the fact that I've just been able to establish myself on a lot of these different networks is crazy, and they keep popping up new ones every day, you know?
Yeah, there's so many different things I want to talk with you about. So when it comes to building out your team, like you have a graphic designer, you have a video, you have people that do websites, like how did you know you wanted to go that route?
I kind of fell into this work too. And I'm kind of low key about it on Instagram just because like, there's a bunch of weird people out there. So I don't really advertise it that much. But uh COVID time was kind of just a time to just sit back and kind of rethink about a lot of things. And fortunately I was living in North Carolina at the time. So my cost of living wasn't very high, especially compared to here. And so, I was able to invest my time more than my money at that moment. And um, I wanted to sit back and reevaluate some things because I was kind of in a position where I was like, okay, I had like about 200,000 followers and I was trying to build a business at the same time. And it's like, what do I value? And I didn't really want to be the center of attention for the things that I wanted to do for some of these companies. And so I realized that I needed skilled people around me that can kind of help produce those things. Uh, even with social media, like I built a following around having very little talent around media production. Right. I just know what people want to look at, but that's not really the same thing as like, making a commercial or any of that stuff. So I sat there and I was like, okay, well, I do want to make a Super Bowl commercial before I turn 30. I always have lofty goals, right? Because you usually get to like 80% of your goal. And then, so I had that. And then I had a business partner at the time that was filming these videos. And I was watching that. I was thinking about some stuff I learned in college. And I was like, storytelling is really the center of everything. However, like I'm not the best storyteller. I can share different stories and whatnot, but there are some people that are so gifted at that. And so I was working with one storyteller at the time, and things didn't really work out. But then, as I kind of figured that stuff out, I figured out my general purpose was to help people better understand who they are. Like, how do you do that? Is through storytelling. And so I moved out to California. And when I was here, I was like, I don't want to manage social media stuff anymore. Like, I'll take care of my own, but I was managing other people's stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I want to dial in on the storytelling stuff. And so I just happened to meet the right guy at the right time. Like maybe 2 weeks after I moved here. It was like perfect timing. And started doing some projects with him. And then he was telling stories there. And I realized that like there's a whole bunch of different elements of a brand. And so to help people best understand who they are, you do that through branding and business, right? So there's like the self-help world, which is the personal side. And then the business side is all branding, right? Self-identification. And so I started assembling all these different people that had all these different like niche skill sets that could all work together. And I realized as if I can work with a bunch of different people that are skilled, my skill set is making sure that they can get the work done and selling it to the companies. Which then like it's funny how the process is random because what happens is when you do stuff, you run into problems. And when you run into problems, you find solutions for those problems. That's kind of the core of entrepreneurship, right? And so every time I do more stuff, I'd encounter a new problem. And so the problem that I realized at that point when I started talking to these different people is very skilled people don't like handling the business side. They just want to build their talent, right? And so if I could just deal with the business side, that would be my talent is negotiating business deals. So then I kind of became an agent for these people. And just handled the business side, made sure they all got paid more. I make a cut of that. And now I just started working with all these different people. And that's kind of the story.
There you go. Yeah. I really love and want to dive a little deeper into the when you tell your story, you understand yourself better. For me, when I've done writing of trying to write a book about myself or my story or something, it's true. You totally like see and understand yourself better. And there's a real sense of like, I don't know. I don't really know how to put it into words, but could you go deeper on that?
Let's see, with telling stories, better understanding yourself. Okay, so um there's a few things that need to happen before you get there. Um and I think a lot of people get caught up at the first step, which is acceptance, right? Uh People need to accept the positives and negatives about themselves. And if you just are closed to the negatives, then you only can understand the what you think are positives about yourself, right? And so because a lot of people don't aren't open to hearing and learning about that part of themselves, they need to get to that acceptance point before the rest of it. So that's one thing I figured out. Now, another thing I realized is if you spend a lot of time with someone, you tend to understand them better than they understand themselves oftentimes. Right. So, if I spent every day with you for 2 months, first of all, it'd be really easy to figure out what to get you for your birthday, for Christmas, etc. Right. Second of all, I'd know all of your interests, passions, whatnot. Um, obviously, like I have a Koenigsegg behind me. You have all sorts of, stuffed animals behind you. So, like, like it gives a little peek of interest into, like, what a person cares about and whatnot. So, um, that being said, with storytelling's interesting because when you hear and interpret or see or hear and interpret a story, your interpretation of that story is based on all of your own life experiences, not someone else's, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing because if you haven't experienced a lot of things, you're not going to understand as much. So the more things you experience, the more you'll understand. And that's kind of, I think, three of the elements that I think are really important about, storytelling and self-understanding.
Yeah, I think it really does help when you've connected other dots in the past. Steve Jobs said you can only connect the dots looking backward. And then there's something else I read, like great leaders connect the dots looking forward or whatever. So it's like, okay. But the cool thing is that once we have completed some kind of project, or we have done something and seen it to completion, we are able to see it from more of an objective lens. Whereas when we're in it, we're in the story. Sometimes it's easy to get kind of caught up in things. So I want you to tell a story real quick about one of the hardest decisions that you've had to make, and the big blessings that come from it. You moved to California. Was that from North Carolina, or what was the?
I kind of moved around a few times in my life. So I was born in New York, and then I moved to Florida when I was 7. My parents wanted to get out of there. They wanted to put me in a better school, etc. And then I went to college in North Carolina for 4 years. And then after college, I went back to Florida, trying to figure out a couple things. So then I went back to North Carolina, and COVID happened. I went back to Florida after that, because I'm like, what am I doing here? So I went back to Florida because I knew I could make a couple quick bucks and take that and go out to California. However, I'm sitting there, and this was December 2020. And I'm like, first of all, like, there's no point in living in California right now because it's a mess with the whole like illness situation. And then I was also like, how am I going to afford to live out there? Everyone complains about how expensive California is. And so I'm sitting there trying to figure this out. So that's when I knew. I was like, I just need to like, and for whatever reason, it's just ingrained in my head that I don't want to work for anyone else ever. So I have this stubborn like voice in my head. It's like, don't work for anyone, don't work for anyone. And then I have this other thing like, you need money to live in California. And it's just like tearing me apart. And I'm like, maybe I'll just work a job for a couple months. And I'm like, I don't want to stoop to that level. Even it's not like anyone that works a job is below me or whatnot, but it's just not what I know. My own like self-control, and like I could not do well being told what to do, my reckless self. So um so then I ended up just spending a week figuring out every option I could get to make some money and provide value. And so when I stopped focusing on like the money side, I was like Googling like, how do I make money online, whatever. And I just like talked to some people, and this guy's like, hey, I need help with this and this and this with marketing. It's like, okay, well, once I realized, okay, let me just offer some value to someone, boom, I got paid. So I took that money and moved to California in April, which not easy. It's not easy to just like pick up your entire life and then move 2,500 miles away. So, but it was the best decision I ever made, because obviously when I got out here a couple of weeks later, I met that one guy, and then that led to that and whatnot. So the more I kept taking actions, the more it kind of led to stuff. But it was, I mean, it's not like a tough time in my life. It's not like I was completely broke. I mean, I was close, but um, I wasn't like completely broke. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't like dealing with any sort of major strife. But at the same time, I was like so motivated to get to California. I had to figure out a solution and not a lot of time. So it kind of paid off.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Like the timing was so good on your part, and it was good enough that once you were there, you ran into that guy, and things were hunky dory. I went and visited Florida for the first time and loved it. I was in Orlando for a podcasting conference, and when I was leaving there, I'm like, bro, I need to live here. I think it'd be really fun to live there. Just was kicking out with my at the hotel with my flip-flops. I'm like, this is great, because I've lived in the West for the last, 4 or 5 years for my mission trip and all of college. And it's something that's been recurring in my mind, is like, how am I going to get there, and why am I here right now? And I think I played a lot of video games growing up, still play video games here and there. And so I think of like some of those RPG games where it's like you've completed all the quests, like this is what you have to do in this town. And when you've done that, well, what are you doing? Like you're kind of, you need to move on. You need to keep going, and same thing with like Pokemon or any of those other things. Like you have this like end goal. In Pokemon, it's like it's implanted in you the second you start the game. It's like you are going to become a Pokemon champion or whatever. And to do that, you have to get this badge, this badge, this badge, and this badge. So I just love that you had that voice like telling you and helping you to get there and to push. And it sounds like talking with people really helped you to make that step. Were there any other opposition or anything like that, or was it mostly just yourself?
Mostly me. I think you are your own biggest enemy. My parents were all on board with me doing whatever I wanted, which was super fortunate. A lot of people don't have that freedom. Um, I just got a Tesla at the time. Like I mentally knew like I'm gonna be living in California, gas is $4 or $5 a gallon, whatever. Like that's a cost like I don't want to make. And I took that sacrifice. Like I had to sacrifice a couple things, but like most of it is psychological, is like if you really truly care and want something, you'll find a way to get it. And like I think that's with everything. So I don't even know if it's being at the right place at the right time with that sense. It's like you figure out ways to get what you truly honestly want. You have to be honest with yourself about it.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure of like your religious background, but how much of this do you feel has been like God helping you out or like divine intervention or anything like that to like help you out get to where you are?
Honestly, I'm not sure because the universe does work in strange ways, right? And sometimes I see things line up and it's like it was too good to just happen naturally. But at the same time, I also think that I work hard enough to make sure that I open the door for a lot of different opportunities. So it's always a battle of like, well, is this, something that's above human control, or is this something that I actually um, manifested myself? And I think there is some sort of mixture of both, right? And I think a lot of people they place too much emphasis on religion. They think that it's almost like an entitlement thing. I was talking about that with someone this morning. Is like I don't know if you saw my story yesterday, but
Mm-mm.
I was talking about how like everyone's replaceable, and he's like, "Well, that's kind of a narcissistic thing." I'm like, "No, you don't get it." It's like people sometimes are entitled about labels, right? And so, um, I feel that way sometimes about religion. And so, I form like formalized religions is like a lot of people they feel entitled as if like God is going to guide them without them putting in their own effort, right? And so, like, and I was using the example with him of marriage, right? Is that um, a lot of people they think once they get married, like, all right, well, that's it. And it's like you have to constantly put in effort, constantly improve yourself, improve your marriage, like put in all that work because, you know, people meet other people every day. Like you could get replaced as a spouse, right? Any day of the week. So obviously that's like a process that takes time and whatnot. But like if you just think like, oh, because I'm married, like I'm set, like that that's the worst thing that could happen is everything could fall apart. So that's one of the things that keeps me motivated is like I know that if I like get lazy, get complacent, think that the universe is going to take care of me, like I know that someone else can come and replace me tomorrow. Um, I think each person is special in their own way, so no one's 100% replaceable, but um, everything evolves. So that's kind of my take on that, which is a little complex.
Sorry. No, I think you're spot on with that, belief and that line of thinking. I was talking with my uncle about this, and how I'd been like looking for a job and stuff, and he's like, you can pray for a chair and God's going to give you like a tree, or you're going to have like a tree in your life come up. And we all have different trees. And it's like, okay, here's a tree, is a perfectly good tree. Now break it down, cut it up, and then so you can make a chair so you have something to work with. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I feel like for me, when my change growth really started happening was when my work kind of aligned more with God's vision for me. of what I believe that is anyway. And for any vision to be brought to pass, there has to be work. You can't wish anything in, like, you can manifest or whatever you want to call it, but if you just want it to happen all of a sudden, like, good luck with that. I think it's interesting because you're exactly right, because there's people that say, well, there's this one story. I don't know if you've heard it, but there's this, you might think it's kind of funny. There's this guy and he's drowning. He's fell out of this boat. He's drowning and he prays like, God, help me out, So, this boat comes by. It's like, hey, I'm here to help you. And the guy's like, God's going to help me. And
Yeah.
then this helicopter comes by and it's like, hey, man, I just saw you and just came and just wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm here to get you to safety. It's like, stop. God has got this, man. God has got this. And then, this giant yacht comes by and it's like, hey, we see you're drowning. We want to help you out. Guy's like, dude, I'm good. Thank you. But God has got this. Then he dies and God is talking to him and he's like, why didn't you help me, God? He's like, dude, I sent you a boat, a helicopter, and a yacht. What more do you want? And I think sometimes we really are just so close-minded. What if, the opportunity can be made into something else,
I agree with that.
So, okay, well, now that we've kind of talked about some of that a little bit, let's talk about like your overall, just the mission with your content of helping people understand themselves and just going after their dreams. Kind of what is that vision look like for you?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was a bit introspective over the last few years. So I kept asking myself different questions. And so one thing I've been doing on social media for like 5 years is I just ask people, are you happy? Yes or no? And I reach out to a lot of the people that say no, not all of them, but a lot of them. And just kind of learn, why people aren't happy. But I really wanted to know the answer to that. Like, just genuinely interested. It has nothing to do with high-end cars, has nothing to do with like my work or anything. Just wanted to know. And so I started like digging into this question, and I noticed a correlation in life. And correlation doesn't imply causation, but I noticed that happiness and confidence kind of tie in with one another. And so I was like, okay, well, if you're confident with something, you're almost always happy doing it. Whereas if you lack confidence in something, chances are you're not happy when you're doing something, right? So, I grew up playing golf. Like, if I hit a bad shot, like my confidence went down, I was not happy. I hit a good shot. My dad used to call me Spike because my emotions were
Yeah.
so um so I noticed that pattern and I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I was like, how does that relate to people? Like, why aren't people happy? And I realized it's like, well, the confidence kind of ties with self-esteem, right? So if you're lacking self-esteem, you're never happy with yourself, right? You're not confident in yourself. However, people that have high self-esteem, they tend to be happier. They're like happier with their self. And so, what I realize is, the people that have high self-esteem, they tend to understand themselves really well and they accept a lot of things about themselves. And so I was like, okay, well, that must mean that a lot of people that are unhappy, they don't understand who they are. Because like, if you understand the good things about yourself, you understand like your purpose and where you're going with different things, like chances are you have purpose, like you have a reason to live tomorrow. So you're going to be happy because all of a sudden you realize that every action in your life leads to that purpose. And so sitting there, I was like, wow, like that's kind of interesting. And so that's kind of what kind of led into the branding and everything. But like, I mean, it kind of strayed a little bit away from your question, but I think it's just a really important thing for people to realize is like, you need to really understand who you are before you can even figure out what you want to do in life. And like you're never going to understand everything, right? You're always evolving, you're always changing, you're always learning new things, getting new experiences. But at the same time is like if you understand like how you got to where you are today because of your past experiences, you understand, your strengths and weaknesses, and you know how to use them to do something for tomorrow, then you can live a more fulfilling life. So
Yeah.
that's what I realized.
Yeah, I think for me, I appreciate you breaking that down. For me, it helps to, just ask the why question. Usually if you say like, oh, I don't, you know, I don't want to, go to the gym. Why? I don't like how I look. Why? Because this person said I look stupid. Why? Probably because they're insecure. And now, we kind of, when we let ourselves do more of the talking, I think sometimes we just don't let ourselves like speak for ourselves.
Mhm.
So cool. Well, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about your work and everything else that you're doing, Michael?
Well, my DMs are always open. So, and that's one thing that surprises people. And I'm like, I get it, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know why people make such a big deal out of it. It's like, if you're going to message me and I see a message, like, I mean, as a business person, I'm going to check all my emails, all my messages, because you never know who you're going to like get in contact with, right? So I've had some unbelievably cool people DM me. I've made money from just random people messaging me before. So like I see it all as an opportunity. Other people, I don't get how some of these pages they don't like respond to messages and whatnot. I mean, I've seen some people like they have like thousands of messages, but I also think that they have bad time management. So, uh, my DMs are always open. Like if anyone wants to talk to me about anything, um, hopefully it can be like a conversation that leads to something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one person that like if we're gonna talk about something or do something, like it's got to be meaningful. Like that's what it's like. Very few of my friends sit around and do nothing all day, right? And it's like, I mean, I just took a friend. We went to 9 car shows last weekend, right?
Dude, really? That's
Yeah,
crazy.
and we could have went to more. I missed out on like 3 or 4, which is ridiculous, but that's California, right? And so like I'm always on my feet. I'm always doing something, right? Like I just told you, I have a call in 20 minutes, like, and then after that call, I have a photo shoot for 4 hours, and I'm going to a hockey game tonight, right? So it's like I'm always like making the most use of my time, right? Because life is short, and so am I. So, but yeah, so it's like yeah, I mean, my email's in there. Like people can email. Like I try and make myself very easy to reach.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, so that's kind of I try and keep it simple.
That's cool, man. Well, definitely put all that stuff in the show notes if anybody wants to reach out to Michael and just talk with him. He's a fun guy to talk to. And just thanks for coming on, man, and wish you the best of luck with everything else you have today. And thank you for making your time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on here. This is a good chat.
Yeah, yeah. Well, take care, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. But keep up the good work, man.
Likewise. Thank you.
You got it, man. Bye.